us her awesome commentary. In the meantime, let's go to the phone lines because we do have F.Lee Bailey with us today, as promised. Now F.Lee Bailey, many of you know, he's synonymous, truly, with excellence in defending clients, especially those who are in dire straits, particularly in murder cases. And there's a particularly famous murder case that most of you will remember him for. And in just a moment, I'm going to tell you one that you might not have remembered that he was involved in very famously. But Mr. Bailey, first, he served in the United States Marine Corps as a Sabre jet pilot and a legal officer. And he went to Boston University, where he graduated at the top of his class in 1960. Now, his prominence as a young attorney was very firmly established by his successful appeal before the United States Supreme Court in the famous Sam Shepard murder case. Now, in case that name, to you, some of you younger folks, you younger listeners, in case that name doesn't ring a bell, Sam Shepard murder case, but in that case, Bailey argued that Shepard had been denied due process, which resulted in Shepard being retried and then finally acquitted. Now, Sam Shepard, some of you older folks will know, and you younger people will know the name of this TV show and the movie that was made about Sam Shepard's case, and of course, F.Lee Bailey's involvement in that, and that's called The Fugitive TV series with David Jansen, and then, of course, the Hollywood movie with Harrison Ford, The Fugitive. And so F.Lee Bailey's involved in all of this stuff and much more, but probably he's most remembered for his effective cross-examination of Detective Mark Furman, that eventually demolished the prosecution's credibility and led to a not guilty verdict for O.J. Simpson. That's F.Lee Bailey, and we have him right here on Freedom Friday today. Now, he's just recently co-authored a book entitled Excellence in Cross-Examination. He co-wrote that with Massachusetts Judge Kenneth J. Fishman, and we're going to ask Mr. Bailey about that book and so much more. Mr. Bailey, you with us today?
I am right here.
All right, fantastic. It's always good to know that the guest is on the line, and we're so happy that you're with us today. It's an honor to have you, Mr. Bailey, and been following your career for a long time. I spent 10 years in Florida law enforcement myself and have a little bit
Where?
in Leon County and in Jefferson County with two different sheriff's offices. Yeah, deputy sheriff, and did some criminal investigations, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm a big fan of cops, and I do a lot of lecturing for them.
Well, I know you do, and I've been a follower of yours and a fan of yours for many years as well. Excited about your new book, and I want you to tell us about that. But first, let me ask you, where can people, as we get started, the name of your new book is Excellence in Cross-Examination. Where can they find the book? Where can they get the book? And where can they review the book? And also tell them if you have a website where people can discover more information about you, Mr. Bailey.
I do have a website. There's not a segment on the book yet. It's Bailey and Elliott. My partner is Debbie Elliott, 2 L's, 2 T's.
Okay.
But the book has been reviewed a number of times. I think you'll find reviews on Amazon. I know you can buy the book there.
Okay.
You can buy it direct from West Publishing Company in Minneapolis, the biggest law book publisher in the world. But I think Amazon will save you a few bucks.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Well, tell us about that particular book, which is your newest book, Excellence in Cross-Examination. Tell us about it. I mean, who is your target audience there? Is that mainly for law students, or can a layperson get into it and enjoy it as well?
It is for law students, for young lawyers, for middle-aged lawyers, for mature lawyers, for witnesses, for experts. It's intended to reach a wide scope because it's cross-examination, ancient though it is still the main test ingredient for who wins and who loses lawsuits.
Right.
And so it's becoming a lost art. There hasn't been a notable book written on the subject since 1950, and I have long been an intense student and practitioner of cross-examination, and I said to my protege now, Judge Ken Fishman, with whom I've been writing law books for many years, it's time for the big one, and we think we've done it.
Yeah.
History will tell. This is not the bestseller list kind of deal. Lawyers have to read it, and they have to use it. If you follow it, it's a boot camp. You've got to do a lot of work to be a good cross-examiner.
Yeah.
And a few will emerge, but in order for that to happen, a lot have to try, and that's what we're hoping we inspired. For those who just like to be entertained, there are 7, I like to think, good representative cross-examinations in the book.
Uh-huh.
I have annotated all of them, giving my insights as to what the examiner was trying to do. And we have Roy Black, we've got Dick Sprague out of Philadelphia, maybe the greatest trial lawyer alive at age 87.
Wow.
I did 4 of them, and one of them is Dr. Sam Shepard's case you were just mentioning.
Yeah, so that case is in this book.
The cross-examination of the coroner,
right,
who made a complete fool of himself in the first trial, but was never challenged, never cross-examined on the point. He said that he saw next to the victim's head on a pillow the imprint of a surgical instrument. Oh, what an awful thing to say when a doctor,
right,
a surgeon, is the defendant, when he had no idea what it was. It was really a Rorschach imprint. But, of course, by the time the second trial rolled around, 12 years after the murder,
right,
I had him by the short hair.
Right.
And although a less experienced fellow could have done him in, I've got to say I enjoyed it. Sort of, vengeance is mine, said the Lord.
I hear you, Mr. Bailey. Well, listen, given the stature of your presence, I would imagine this book may wind up a standard in law school and perhaps even in some law enforcement academies in years to come. What do you think? I know
it's interesting you should mention that. I lecture regularly for the FBI. Mm-hmm. And the last time I lectured, they ordered 50 copies.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't imagine, given what this book is about and the amazing information in it and your stellar presence and career through the years, and I can't imagine that it will not be used. I mean, who would not?
Carl, there's a little C-story I want to throw in because I heard you open with reference to the Shepard case and The Fugitive.
Yes.
There was, by the way, a movie made called The Shepard Case starring George Peppard.
Wow.
But it didn't enjoy the audience of Fugitive. However, when I went to pick a jury in Cleveland in 1966, having reversed the conviction and got in the U.S. Supreme Court to rule, yes, indeed, he was entitled to a new trial, most of the jurors watched The Fugitive starring David Jansen.
Right.
The movie wasn't made until later. And everybody knew that The Fugitive was innocent because they told you so.
That's right.
So for the perhaps only time in my life, I picked a jury in a criminal case, mostly of people who presumed the defendant was innocent because The Fugitive was.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's got to do something for you. Well, listen, Mr. Bailey, let me just gosh, there's so many things. I want to ask you about the O.J. Simpson case in a moment. Also, there's a lot going on about this. Paul McCartney is dead in the mock trial, and that you were involved in, and how that started an urban legend. And I want to talk about that. Plus, and plus, didn't you also write a book, How to Protect Yourself Against Cops in California and other strange places?
Yes, I did. I got pulled over for driving while impaired, which I was not. So I got acquitted very quickly, and then to punish the evildoers involved, including the cop, the prosecutor, and others, I wrote a book.
Oh, my gosh. I want to hear about that, too. We're going to take our first and only time out here. And so let's take about a couple-minute time out. We're going to be back with Mr. F.Lee. We're going to go right back to the phone because my guest this afternoon is the famous Mr. F.Lee Bailey. Of course, most of you know him as the trial lawyer for the O.J. Simpson case. He was O.J. Simpson's lawyer, his defending attorney, of course. And he was the attorney in the Sam Shepard case, of which the movie The Fugitive was made. Mr. Bailey, thank you so much for being on the show today. We've got so much more to talk about. You and I were just talking off the air. Tell folks where they can find some really good information about the O.J. Simpson case, and then I want you to explain to our audience why you still think that he is innocent and that whole trial was a blight, a shame upon America's legal system.
It was a shame on the legal system, but more on the press. It was just covered by a bunch of inexperienced, I don't care, jump to conclusions people. There was one solid reporter there named Linda Deutsch, who's the senior reporter for the Associated Press. She did her usual beautiful job. She is about to write a major article about the 20-year anniversary of O.J. Simpson to try to explain in a few seconds why O.J. didn't do it. Would be unfair to everybody.
Yeah.
I have written a 17,000-word synopsis
Okay.
of what I know about the case. It is irrefutable. It's not my side of the case. It comes from the records. It's on my website, BaileyandElliott.com, and I invite people to read it. But basically, O.J. couldn't have done it. That is, he didn't have the opportunity. He wouldn't have done it. He had no motive, and his demeanor at no time before or after he learned of the murder was in any way consistent with a guy who had committed a violent crime for only once in his life.
Right, right. Let me ask you, now, the anniversary of that event was, it's 20 years next month, right? 20 years ago, Mr. Bailey. Good gracious.
June 12th, two
Yeah.
days after I turned 81.
Unbelievable. 20 years ago. I mean, good gracious, I was 38 years old. It's just astounding to me how quickly time flies. Let me ask you, 20 years ago was, and you'll have to refresh my memory because I've been out of law enforcement for 30 years. 20 years ago, was DNA evidence available much? Was it being used in trials much? I don't think it was it?
Oh, yes.
Was it
Yes.
20 years ago?
It was featured in the O.J. Simpson case, and we conceded some of it, but most of it was contaminated by poor police procedures.
Yeah.
And that which was not disputed didn't really mean anything. O.J.'s blood was found where you might expect to find O.J.'s blood, but none was found that would implicate him in the crime, at least none that was reliable.
Right. I see. Okay. So again, and before we move on to a couple of other topics here very quickly, again, people can find, I mean, you've written a 17,000-word synopsis of all of this, and they can find that at BaileyandElliott.com. BaileyandElliott.com, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it easy to find? Is there a link to it, or is it right on the front page? How can they find it?
Just go to Google.
Okay. All right. BaileyandElliott.com, folks, and you can find that. Well, of course, my guest this afternoon is F.Lee Bailey. Mr. Bailey, tell us about this, the Paul McCartney is dead, the mock trial you did, and how that urban legend got started. You know, I was reading, before I even knew you were going to be on my show, a couple of weeks ago, I was on the internet reading something about that, was blown away by that urban legend, and now, of course, I find out that you're very involved in that. Tell folks about that.
Well, it's an odd story, but, you know, in any profession with a lot of tension in it, both flying and trying cases, and I have done a lot of both. If you don't have a sense of humor, you'll either go nuts or make a mistake and kill yourself or somebody else.
Right.
I made great friends with the producers of the Mike Douglas show in Cleveland when I had Shepard case. One of those, Woody Frazier, called me. He said, Lee, I'm going to start a new show for Good Morning America. I'd like you to be one of the stars, and we're going to have a baseball player who was named David Hartman as the lead. And ABC was 8 out of 3 networks at that point. But and Dr. Kim, who was still on it, by the way.
Right.
And when we got it rolling, and it took off, it became number 1 within a very few years. Woody, who had a pocket sense of humor, said, Lee, someone is playing the record, Dr. Pepper.
Yeah. Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Like that.
Yeah. Dr. Pepper. Yep.
And they're playing it back.
Sergeant Pepper.
One of the grooves, Sergeant Pepper.
Yeah.
One of the grooves, it sounds like someone is saying, Paul is dead.
Right. I remember that.
So I'd like to do a little TV show, obviously it's spoofed, and see whether you, as a lawyer, find any convincing evidence that Paul is dead.
Right.
And that's how this whole thing arose.
Right.
Of course, Paul wasn't dead. At the end of the show, I said, there's no evidence that he's dead, but the anomaly of the backwards soundtrack really had people set off, and it was fun.
Right. Well, and of course, people are still debating all of that today. All of these years later.
I know.
Absolutely amazing.
You know, people will reinvent things over and over again because they don't have enough to do. People reinvented the Boston Strangler 20 times until we DNA'd it a year ago.
I know, you're right. Listen, you're such a colorful figure with so many years of experience, and you're in your 80s and still going strong. And I was asking you off the air if you were going to publish a memoirs book, and you said that's coming up next, right?
Well, it's coming up after a long while. I've got a long way to go. And as long as I get up in the morning and am in the mood to kick ass and take names, I don't have to start writing that book.
I hear you. Well, please get some stuff down just in case. I mean, you know, a semi-truck could run a stop sign tomorrow. Not wishing anything bad, but that could happen to any of us. But get something down, because I tell you what, there are a lot of people that would love to read that book, myself included. We've only got really about a minute and a half. But tell folks, since we have such a large Gulf Coast audience, and we are the strongest Gulf Coast radio station between Tampa and New Orleans, 25,000 watts. We broadcast to 4 states. Tell people about your U.S. Marine and Naval aviator career right here on the Gulf Coast.
When I was 18, I enlisted in the Navy and applied for naval flight training and was admitted to Pensacola. I had 2 years of college at the time. It was a 4-year contract. The most fascinating personal building and dangerous time of my life. I found out years later, reading a book by Tom Wolfe, that the naval flight training is more likely to kill you than combat or almost anything out there.
I can imagine.
But, and I'm going to tell you, the parachute was puckered every now and then. But landing on a carrier at Pensacola, and that's the last thing I did before I got my wings, was to fly a World War II Hellcat to a carrier. I had a ball. I was king of the world, cock of the walk. And I think that naval aviation is the best in the world.
And listen, I agree with you. One of the past commanders of Whiting Field is a member of the church that I pastor and a dear friend of mine. In fact, he's getting ready to take a group from our church on a tour of the Naval Aviation Museum at NAS, and he's going to guide the tour himself. And I can't wait until that happens. He's in his early 80s as well, so that'll be fascinating.
Well, Carl, 25 years after I got my wings,
yeah,
I pinned a set of wings on my son
at
Whiting Field. And he went almost immediately to the Persian Gulf.
Wow. Congratulations. That is amazing. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your son's service. Thank you for your appearance today on Freedom Friday. Mr. Bailey, we'd love to have you back in the future if you're up to it.
You name it. You've got a great show. It's a delight to be here.
Okay, well, good deal, and God bless you. And folks, that's F.Lee Bailey. We will have him back, O.J. Simpson's lawyer. Go to his website, BaileyandElliott.com, BaileyandElliott.com. Check him out there, particularly that 17,000-word synopsis of the O.J. Simpson trial. It might rack your brain and change your mind about that whole thing. Check out his new book, Excellence in Cross-Examination. Excellence in Cross-Examination. And then you might want to look at his book that he did before, How to Protect Yourself Against Cops in California and Other Strange Places. Freedom Friday. We'll be back in a moment. Brandon Gallups in the house.